Confluence of romance, influence of coincidence. Three couples united by deity, far-sighted. Began as a simple trip, three Estolian men seeking the glow of an aura.
As a nation, a religion, and a society, Estolia will never survive if she cannot stand up to close scrutiny. It is critical we work to clarify those beliefs and practices that, from an outside perspective, seem outdated, sexist, and chauvinistic. We must be able to demonstrate our proper place within and as a part of our modern global society. Isaiah Monterey, Zakarian, Capítulo 88.
They rode the elevator to the 27th floor. As the doors opened, Liar looked around curiously. There were only 4 doors leading off the spacious lobby. Max led her to the nearest one and pressed the doorbell. The door was opened by a young man who was extraordinarily handsome, with dark hair and golden eyes, and a serious demeanor at odds with his age, which she guessed was not that much older than her own 20 years. Another, equally handsome man was with him, with golden brown hair and eyes.
Damien Zib,
Max said in surprise. He embraced both men, and Liar enjoyed watching what was obviously a reunion between the 3 attractive men. Finally, Max turned to Liar and said,
Damian, Zeb, this is Liar. Liar, this is Prince Sebastiani Alexandros Zakarian, but he goes by Zeb.
He pointed to the darker man first and then the blonde.
This is Damien Zakarian.
They are my cousins.
Both men hugged her as if she was a relative. Eventually, they moved into a spacious living room. Max settled Liar next to him. He had assumed a proprietary air around her.
Where are Nico and Uncle Zeke?
He asked. Damien chuckled, earning a sour look from the serious Zeb.
You cannot blame any man for the way he reacts to your sister.
Damien said to him. He turned to Max and answered.
Apparently, Rhea was abducted by some Romeo who thought she was a call girl.
Max frowned and looked from the jovial expression on one cousin's face to the serious expression on the other's.
What am I missing?
Zeb scowled and said,
I actually know him. I'm not sure I care for him becoming my brother-in-law.
He is not in your wealth bracket, cousin. Few people are.
Damien said. He added,
The man involved is Zer Amador.
Amador.
Max exclaimed. Before either man could respond to Max, the door opened and 2 more men came into the room. The dark-haired younger man looked around the same age as Max, with nearly black hair, dimples, and warm brown eyes. The older man's lighter hair was thinning slightly, but he had a kind demeanor. More remarkable was the way they were dressed. He wore a rich robe of purple and green, heavily embroidered with gold thread. The younger man was wearing a similar, but less elaborate robe with a black sash draped over his right shoulder and fastened at his hip on the opposite side of his body. Max stood and gestured for her to stand as well. He said,
Liar, this is my uncle Lazarus Ezekiel Zakarian. He is our religious leader and his title is Keeper. Uncle Zeke, this is Liar Langham.
I am pleased to meet you, young lady. Please call me Zeke.
He took both of her hands and held them for several seconds before giving them a squeeze and saying,
I did not know that my nephew was acquainted with such a charming young woman.
Liar blushed at the seemingly heartfelt praise.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Liar, this is my cousin, Zeb's brother Prince Nicodemus Luciano Zakarian, last resort and first consul to the king of Estolia. Nico, this is Liar.
Call me Nico. I am rarely called Nicodemus or Prince.
He said with a glare at his cousin. The men all seemed to hold so many titles that she was having trouble keeping track of which names and titles went with which man.
Have you come straight from the wedding?
Zeke asked. Max nodded.
Yes, Liar and I were partnered in the wedding party.
The 2 newcomers settled to the remaining empty chairs in the living room. Max changed the subject to ask,
Tell me, uncle, how is Rhea?
The older man glanced at the serious Zeb briefly before he answered,
I knew her pathway in life was going to be rocky, and that she would need my guidance at this time. I believe, however, that the man who has become enchanted by her will treat her right.
Zeb jutted his chin and Liar could see muscles working in his jaw as his brows drew together. He got to his feet.
Damien and I have to leave,
he said abruptly. Zeke stood.
Of course.
Addressing Liar, he said,
If you will excuse us.
He and the other 2 men left the living room. Liar heard the murmur of voices from the foyer.
Nico, will Rhea be okay?
Max asked the man who remained behind. Nico had a solemn expression on his face, but he nodded.
Yes, Max. Can you imagine any man seeing her aura and not securing her permanently?
Max shook his head.
You are right, of course. She certainly got more than her fair share of good looks.
Zeke returned to the living room and sat down again.
So how can I help you, Maximilian?
He asked. Max grinned, dimples showing on his face.
You are in truth one of the best keepers, uncle.
His smile faded and he said,
I was moved by how beautiful Lyra is. When I met her, I was struck by her beauty. To me, she embodied all the colors of the aurora borealis I expected to find in Canada on my planned trip, a beautiful glow brightening my horizon.
Zeke switched his attention to Lyra, and she felt as if there were layers of the conversation that were beyond her.
Indeed, she is exquisite. It would seem to me that this simplifies your sudden recall to Estolia.
He nodded.
I have no doubts on that score, truly, but I wanted to get your advice on the situation that has developed.
He then proceeded to outline his confrontation with Lyra's father. Zeke listened intently, glancing at Lyra from time to time.
I believe it would be best if I had an interview with the young lady. I should be able to help you divine your best path forward. Maximilian, you already know the best possible course for yourself, regardless of the outcome of this conversation.
Max turned to Lyra and said,
Would you remain here with my uncle while I take care of a few things? I will not be gone long.
Okay, though eventually I will have to call around to a few of my friends to see if one of them can put me up for the night.
Max and Nico departed, leaving her alone with the affable older man.
Rebellious princess.